From the studios of UNO Television, this is the Omaha News Vote 2018, brought to you by the University of Nebraska at Omaha School of Communication.
Secretary of State John Gale reports that there are nearly 1,220,000 registered voters in Nebraska. More than half are registered Republicans. Democrats make up just over a third, with the rest scattered among libertarians and independents. To help us understand it all tonight, we have our political expert, Dr. Paul Landau from the UNO Political Science Department. He's a familiar presence on our election coverage over the past few years. Dr. Landau, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what's at stake tonight as far as the election goes? What does this mean going forward?
There's a lot at stake tonight. On the federal level, there's control of Congress, as you just mentioned, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Also, there's a lot going on with the governor's races around the country, and that's important in particular because redistricting is coming up after the 2020 census, and the party that's in control generally has a strong hand in discussing the redistricting and what seats go to who.
Thanks, Joe and Mallory. Right now I am joined by Dr. Jody Nethry-Castro from the UNO Political Science Department. She's here to talk about women in this election cycle. Dr. Nethry-Castro, how are you tonight?
I'm well, thanks for asking, Chrissy.
Why do you think there's such a high number of women candidates this election cycle?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons. Women were energized after the 2016 election. I think there were high expectations that Hillary Clinton would win that campaign for presidency. So there were some who were motivated by that. There's also been some different issues that have really motivated folks as well. You know, the reaction to the Trump election kind of culminated also in this Me Too movement. Women that were coming out with their own stories of sexual assault and harassment, and so that has motivated some women to get involved in politics when they might not have otherwise done so. Healthcare is a big issue that women oftentimes run on, and so the prospects of things like Medicare for all, expanding Medicaid in states like Nebraska's and others, and just the general idea of the prospect of the loss of healthcare options has motivated some women. You also have those highly publicized violent attacks, such as the Parkland school shooting, and so gun control is sometimes an issue that is often talked about as a women's issue, but it's really an issue for all. But oftentimes women may be more motivated to run on something like that.
Governor Pete Ricketts has opposed any effort to expand Medicaid in Nebraska, and the legislature has failed to get it approved. So a group called Ensure the Good Life started a petition drive to bypass the unicameral and have voters decide on expansion directly. It's on this year's ballot, and reporter Nicole Torren is covering the issue for us tonight. Nicole?
Medicaid is a joint state and federal program that provides health care services to eligible low-income elderly and disabled individuals, children, and their parents. Today, Nebraskans voted on whether to expand Medicaid eligibility, a decision that could have a massive impact on the state.
Every job I've had, I've lost by being looked at as a liability because I'm unable to get the health care I need to make my issues preventable.
Ashley Anderson as a child was diagnosed with epilepsy, a brain disorder that causes a person to have seizures. Epilepsy is manageable with medication treatment, a treatment Anderson says she can't afford since she does not qualify for Medicaid.
I'm constantly having seizures because I'm rationing my medication to make it last.
Anderson is one of over 24 people who spoke at the District 2 public hearing for the possible expansion of Medicaid in Nebraska, known as Initiative 427. This initiative will increase Medicaid eligibility for 90,000 low-income single adults who make less than $17,000 a year. While supporters say the expansion will also create new jobs and economic activity annually for Nebraska, opponents say it will put a burden on taxpayers and could harm those who already use and need Medicaid.
Nebraskans will see this on their ballots when voting on Initiative 427, where voting for will amend Nebraska statutes to expand Medicaid, while voting against will cause them to not be amended.
According to information provided by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, if approved, new coverage will most likely not start earlier than January 1st, 2020, as they hire and train new staff and update their technology to handle the influx of new recipients. Until the votes decide, Anderson remains hopeful for her sake and others that Initiative 427 will pass.
If it doesn't pass, I honestly, I don't want to think about that really. Positive vibes, fingers crossed.
As the votes finish coming in, we will find out in the next few hours whether Medicaid will be expanded in Nebraska or not. Joe, Mallory, back to you.
Can you elaborate on your views on healthcare for me?
Well, I can tell you that as we've been traveling throughout Nebraska, healthcare is the #1 issue in our state of Nebraska. And what I'm hearing is that families are facing increasing costs of healthcare, and we have to do better. And Senator Fisher is part of the problem when she votes along party lines 98% of those times, even when those votes hurt Nebraskans. And we're seeing her votes hurting Nebraskans with the increasing costs of health care and prescription drugs. We can do better. We need to find solutions. And what I would like to see us do a number of steps, but immediately we need to stabilize the health insurance market. We need to end the price gouging from the pharmaceutical companies, and they should be penalized for that. We need to use the enormous buying power of the United States to negotiate better prescription drug prices, particularly for Medicare Part D, and that impacts our seniors, and certainly for all families who are really struggling with the high cost of prescription drugs. And the next item we need to do is we need to extend those income tax credits for people who would like to get on the health exchange. So it shouldn't matter what your income level is. We know that every income level is facing increasing monthly premium costs, so we need to give them that tax income credit so the premiums are somewhat more affordable.
And it looks like we just got word from our political expert, Dr. Paul Landau, that they have called the Ricketts race, that Ricketts is going to be governor for another term. So Joe, what are your thoughts about that? They're calling that pretty early.
Yeah, kind of with how the number of votes were early. I can see why they called it early, being that he was ahead. He somewhat, and that's a lot of the political analysts said, he had the advantage basically the whole campaign. We'll kind of see where that plays out with the next election cycle and kind of where it goes from there.
So we're actually going to stop in at the Don Bacon event where reporter Simon Ristow is joining us live.
Joe and Mallory, as you can see, we're pretty crowded here now. Lots of people have been filing in. Some cool characters. There was a guy wearing a United States suit. There was a guy dressed as a piece of bacon. Lots of fun things going on here. People having a good time, conversing, eating food, and just an update on the results for the Bacon-Eastman election. In Douglas County, it seems that just over 50,000 votes have been counted, and about 51.1% of those are for Bacon, so he is leading in Douglas County. And for Sarpy County, just about 14,000 votes have been counted, and Bacon is leading in that county as well, 65.7%. So he is in the lead as these early results come in, but we'll get more updates to you coming soon. Joe and Mallory in the studio, back to you.
All right. And we're going to throw it to Ellie Brecht and George Cruz over at our election desk to see what the results are.
Thanks, Mallory. Well, as we continue to wrap up the National Senate results from tonight, we're seeing that the Republicans are going to have control over the Senate, as they just won their 50th Senate seat, and guys, 50 is what they needed. Republicans, like I said, currently have control over 50 seats, while the Democrats have 38 of those. So no surprise here, even though the Democrats did gain quite a few seats tonight, the Republican control can be attributed to the fact that a large number of today's Senate races were in Trump-favoring states, just as we talked about earlier. And a final report on our most competitive race tonight down in Texas, where Republican Ted Cruz is officially our projected winner. I'll hand it over to George with the results from the House.
Ellie, thank you very much. For our final check-in here for the House race, well, it's certainly not over. It does appear that Democrats will take the House. They are currently have 26 Democrats leading in Republican-leaning districts. Since our last check-in, they have gained 2 more seats for a total of 14 pickups. They need 9 more. Of course, in order to get a majority, it is 218. Republicans currently have 137 representatives, and Democrats have 136. Again, it is still not over, but this will be the last time we check in with you. And as Ellie mentioned, it does appear that after tonight is going to be a split Congress. Joe and Mallory, back to you.
We're going to go back to Gabriel right now.
Mallory, Joe, finally we got Pete Ricketts. Governor Pete Ricketts, thank you for the interview. 2 minutes. So taxes, we hear everything in this campaign, right, that you're working so hard. But there's one issue that I like to address, immigration, illegal immigration. A couple of weeks ago, you were attending to this expansion of this company in Grand Island, expanding, hiring a lot of people. We know illegal immigration. It's happening now. It's had happened in Nebraska for a long time. What is your take on that as today? And what is going to happen in the next 4 years with illegal immigration that it's in Nebraska?
Well, immigration is a federal issue, and I support President Trump in securing the border because that's where it's got to start. Now, do we need to have immigration reform here in this country? Absolutely. But it really needs to be done at the federal level, and that's where it's properly handled.
Do you really think that over 5,000 troops is necessary to the south border to tackle this issue of the caravan from Central America?
Well, we see thousands of people coming to crash our gates here, and I think the president's taking appropriate steps to make sure we secure our border. You know, we got to have people come to our country, but we have to do it in a lawful way.
Okay, last question. How would you address now Democrats from now on, try to convince them to go Democrats on the next 4 years?
Well, one of the things that we're focused on is growing Nebraska. That's creating jobs for all of our people, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And that's how we've been able to attract investments from companies like Facebook and Costco that create those jobs that our young people then can pursue. Eric Jones at Kawasaki got a promotion because Kawasaki expanded their aerospace division. So all these things help create better jobs for our people to be able to enjoy the good life here in our state. That's not a Republican or Democrat issue.
Thank you so much. Good luck. Thank you. Pit Ricketts for you guys. Back to you in the studio.
Lindsay, we are joined by the UNO School of Communication professor, Dr. Barbara Pickering, and there are a lot of women running this year. How does that change politics, would you say?
Well, it makes a lot of difference in the way the campaigns are run because women run different kinds of types of ads, different kinds of approaches in the races that they run. And so it changes the dynamics of what issues become the focus. It changes the tone of the race. And there are a lot of things that women contribute to the political dynamic when they run.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Donald Trump winning the presidential nomination, do you think that inspired some women to run for office?
Yeah, you can equate it to the Anita Hill situation in 1992. It became called the Year of the Women. This is Year of the Women Take Two. And it was really visible in the day after the inauguration when you had people who came out in droves to protest the president. And you had that, the Me Too movement, the Supreme Court nomination, and women were really energized and ready to vote and ready to run.
How effective do you think political ads are in voter turnout? Do you think they persuade people?
I think they do less about persuading people and more about further entrenching the base. So the idea of the independent voter being swayed one way or another by an ad, it could happen, but really isn't going to. More advertisement that we see happening on a day-to-day basis that we've been inundated with over the past couple of months here really is all about ensuring that the base goes out and they know who they're voting for, they know why they're voting for that person. So it's ads are more about further getting people aligned with where they should be as far as the party is concerned, and less maybe about convincing people who are not sure who they're going to vote for.
That's it for the Omaha News for Vote 2018.
Yep, thanks so much for joining us here on NET World and the Knowledge Network. And if you want to follow us on our social media, we greatly appreciate it. And from all of us here at UNO Television, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next Wednesday with another edition of the Omaha News. Good night.